Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pardot Consultant Bootcamp. And I, Isha Garg and Payal are here on behalf of Pardot New Delhi and Pardot Ajmer Group. We give you a very warm welcome on behalf of both the Salesforce Marketers Group from New Delhi and Ajmer. And hey, Marcus, thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to hear everything you have in your bucket to share for all the other trailblazers out there. For a product consultant exam. If not exactly for the exam, at least they'll take something very, very useful. I'm pretty much sure. So much. Thank you so much, Marcus, once again for being here, sparing our time for all the trailblazers out there. Yes, we are global, and the stage is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining from. Um, Welcome. My name is Marcos Duran, and I am super excited to be here. I I think this is like an amazing experiment slash thing that we have put together here. I think with the pandemic last year, a lot of the Trailblazer community groups didn't have an outlet to do, and I love that we put together this consultant bootcamp. So congratulations to everybody that has put in the effort here, volunteering to put this together, and then you at home watching us and consuming this knowledge and hopefully passing the exam pretty soon. So without further ado, my name is Marcos Duran. I am in the United States. I am in Texas at the capital here in Austin for the state. And I am a Pardot user group co-leader here. So I'm excited to today take you through some Engage slides here. And then we also have some items on personalization. So let's move forward. So again, here, my title, I'm a CRM and marketing automation strategist at Serconte. We're a gold partner at Salesforce. You can find us on the App Exchange with a couple of our apps as well. I have presented 2 years ago at Dreamforce because last year was all virtual, and different dreaming events in the last 2 years as well. And then, of course, Part Dreaming, I had 2 sessions there. And I saw a lot of you guys join us, so thank you again for following us. I'm also a contributing writer for the spot for Pardot, so we try to put the latest and greatest tips and tricks when it comes to Pardot. I'll be referencing some of those resources per section that I covered today. So I'll make sure that I'll post the slides later, probably on Twitter. So follow me on Twitter. And I am Salesforce certified both on the Pardot and Salesforce side. All right. So our goals today, we're going to be covering personalizing the prospect experience. And towards the end, we'll also cover Salesforce Engage. So I took this directly from the study guide, right? So we are going to be covering about 11% of the exam. When it comes to personalizing the prospect experience, we're looking at a handful of questions, probably anywhere between 6 to 10 of the exam. And then from Salesforce Engage is usually 1 or 2 questions. The goal here is to hopefully get the right questions, right? Or the right pieces of information down. So when you get that 1 or 2 questions that could be the difference between a passing score or failing, that hopefully you have those items together. As I go through this presentation today, I'll be switching back and forth between a sandbox environment that I have with hopefully some specific details and example that I can show you. For Salesforce Engage, I just have a couple of screenshots. I couldn't get a sandbox, right, that has that. So that should be enough to give you a glimpse of what's inside of Engage. All right, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start with personalizing the prospect experience. And so the main items that I'm going to be covering here today are going to be dynamic content, HML, which is handlebar merge language, previously known as PML, and then snippets. So let me just take a note here. Awesome. All right, so I have high level slides, right? in my opinion, like if you're trying to explain it to somebody, this slide should be encompassing. And I also gave you an example here. What I'll do is, like I said, I'll switch into the sandbox, and then hopefully I'll get to show you a couple of little tricks here. So dynamic content, what it is it allows you to display custom content via JavaScript, either on your company's website or within Pardot. There's a couple of things here though that are required. So number one, this is available in Classic or Lightning, but you have to be on the Pardot Plus tier or higher. Not everybody has access to this particular feature within the application. So secondly, the person that you want to communicate to and show this dynamic content to, you have to have cookied. So usually you cookie somebody by them filling out a form, or by you sending them an email if they're in your Pardot database and they open and click on a link. Then what that does is it applies a tracking cookie to their browser on their device. They come back again, right, as that person, and we know who they are. After that happens, right? So usually when they fill out forms, they give us information, right? Like first name, last name, country, maybe area of interest, et cetera, et cetera. What we do is say we match data, usually from a pick list or an exact text box, right? And we say, if this person has this, then show this content, right? So it kind of like an if and then statement. If area of interest, right, equals this, or if country equals, for me, United States, for you, um, the UK, wherever you guys are located, then we will show specific content as you see here. So on the left, I have what the variation is. And then on the left, yeah. And then on the right, I have the content that I would want to display. A, if somebody's cookied, and B, if the data is actually in their record, and then it would display that. So again, you can use this dynamic content on your emails, right? So to personalize footers, to personalize the CTA, to personalize even subject lines. And then if you don't have the data, right, we can set a default statement. And this is kind of like your catch-all option. And then this appears to anybody that doesn't meet one of the other criteria that you got to put in action. Each piece of dynamic content can hold 25 different variations. So you can get very elaborate based on the content that you're displaying here. And one popular use case here that I have is on your email, you may have really cool banners, right, that you want to display based on geographic location. Or you may want to put different like CTA copy, or even different buttons, different HTML, different images in the body content if something changes, like the country or the area of interest. So now let me go ahead and take you into Pardot. Hopefully this link works. Let's see. So in Pardot Lightning, everything I'm going to show you is in Pardot Lightning. We're going to go ahead and go to content, and then dynamic content on the left side. And then I only have one, so I'm going to use this one to update email footer language, right? So again, if I go and I create a new piece, this is what it looks like. So at the top, you get to put your catch-all option, right? And then on the bottom, you get to use pretty much any field. So it usually works best when you have a text field or a pick list, right? Because it's always like exact. You wouldn't be able to use like date fields or lists or anything like that. It's usually fields that you find on the leader and contact level. They can be custom or default, right? So this is again a scratch org. So this is all that I have. And so again, I can pick from different options. In this example, I did country. And so then I went ahead and create different variations for Mexico, for the UK, and then for everybody else, right? This is great when you're trying to personalize that maybe that telephone number or that address right? Depending on what country you're in, you may want to personalize your footer to comply with, can spam in the United States or GDPR in the EU, CASO in Canada, etc. So what I'm going to do is save this, and I'm going to take it one step further, and I'm going to actually go to Pardot email. I have this little template that we're going to be using over and over. It's hideous. Sorry, we can definitely do better, but I just wanted to make sure that I had something to show you. So what I would do here is I can pull in, I think you guys already covered email. So what we'll do is I'll click here, and then I'll go somewhere into the dynamic content, and I won't do a merge field because that's not what this is. We'll go down and we have this little thunderbolt. And so here what we'll do is we'll click the footer, and you get to preview it. This does not mean that you're only selecting one. This just is just a reminder of what you're inserting. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now it has been inserted with the same styling that's in there. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And then what I can do is I can go in here and go into preview. You do have this little testing tool in here that you have a previous prospect. And I have already made a couple of prospects here. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then for this person, this is the catch-all option. Let's keep going. Catch-all option as well. Catch-all. And then this one's catch-all as well. So what I'm going to show you is you manipulate this by controlling the data. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is on number 2. I said this was based on a field country. So I'm going to put Mexico here. And notice that I created dummy test items. If you're on a Gmail-based email address, even if it's like your personal Gmail account, what you can do is you can do let's say for me is Marcos Conte. I have a Gmail-based email address. I can put a plus, and then whatever I want after it, as long as it's before the @ sign. And then if I wanted to build a list for testing with this 4 people, I send it to myself, and all 4 of those people's emails go to my original inbox. And then when I go and I look at the 2, right, sender from sender to recipient line, I can always see if it's the person number 2, number 3, number 4. You could also put the name of the country that you're testing, or you could also put whatever other variation it is. It does only work on Gmail-based email addresses, but that's something pretty cool. So now that I put Mexico here, I'm going to go back to this Pardot email that I had. And then I am going to go ahead and click preview one more time. And I'm going to go to number 2. And this one says in Spanish, por favor, enseñar esta opción en el país de México. So please show this option in the country of Mexico. This email was sent to this email address, and then cancel your subscription, right? And so that's something that you can do fairly easy. So I just wanted to show you this example. And again, if we go to any of the other ones, because they didn't have any data in that field, we're doing the catch-all. Or if I would have done anything outside of UK and Mexico, we would have also shown the catch-all option. And so the cool thing about personalizing this experience is you can use one template but show 25 different variations on your engagement studios, right? For example. Another cool thing that I like to use them for is building kind of like rabbit holes. So let's imagine that you're doing a 3-part webinar series, or you have a 3-part kind of like case study series. Well, once they download the first one, when we go to a form, right? So we'll go under, I believe it's under content. And then we have the standard form. Imagine going into number 4 where we have completion actions. When we have this wonderful thank you content and inserting similar to payout. I don't know what would be, or Aisha, I don't know what would be the equivalent of in India. Do you guys, I'm sure Amazon works there, but I'm sure there's another player there that you can do your e-commerce off of. But anyway, I'm sure you've been somewhere where you buy, you say, because you bought this, you can also, buy this other 3 things. I like to use dynamic content because it is HTML based. You can put a table in it. I like to show maybe 3 images of other pieces of content that people that are related to the one that they just downloaded that they can click and then take them to the landing page, right, in order to download another piece there. So that's in multiple ways that you can use dynamic content. And lastly, you can also personalize subject lines. So again, if you're using one template, but you want to like stretch it out, right? What you can do is if you're collecting like the name of the event on a hidden field, or like maybe a UTM, right? That those are fairly popular. Then you can display different content, right, based on the source that they're coming from. All right, I'm gonna click confirm and save here just to save it. I'm not gonna show you this one because it's not gonna display in there, but until I fill it out. But we're gonna move forward here. Now I'm gonna go to HTML. So for anybody who's brand new to Pardot, right? Like I'm talking like last summer moving forward, HTML is all you know, right? Unless you inherited an older org. If you're a new customer or if you're just learning, HTML is the way to go. What HTML is if you've used any sort of like merge uh, mechanism in the past, like on Excel, like you're making labels, right, for a wedding or for your birthday party or whatever. You essentially have people type in their information and then you put it in a specific order, right? And so like it'd be first name, last name, address, and then something else, name of the business or whatever. So HTML is exactly that. We each field has a token, and that token you could put it pretty much anywhere in the Pardot system. So again, basically it's just a representation of the actual field value for that field under that person. So for me, right, my first name is Marcos. For Esha, her name is Esha, right? And so then what we could do is I can include that in an email, right? And this is what probably the most common thing that people would relate to with HTML, the first name in an email, right? And so then what happens, if I have information, then I'll send it to 50 people, and each of those 50 people would have a different name, right? Because we're pulling directly from their record. But what happens if you don't have a first name, right? And so there's a couple of ways that you can prevent that from happening. Number one, you can make it when you're doing your subscription list to send out um, a on your forms, you can make sure that you're always asking for first name, even for newsletters. I personally think that a lot of people just put like, email newsletters forms because they want people to come in quickly. And that's great. But today, right, personalization is like, it's almost a must. It's like if you don't even have the first name of people, like you're already behind like 4 years, right? Like you should have been doing that already. And so when I put a form together, I'll try to do something like a 2-column form, right, with a button in the middle for newsletter subscriptions. We grab the email, we grab the first name, and at the very least, that's all I have. But that's really all I need, right, to at least get started. And so what happens if I don't have data, right? So again, I'm collecting on a form. If I missed it for whatever reason, then I can say only give me on a dynamic list, right? For example, only give me people that have a first name. And let's say you don't want to exclude those people, right? You do want to show them this content as well. Well, HTML allows you to do if and then statements as well. We won't go over into those in a whole lot of detail. I do have a resource that's kind of like an extra step. Um, don't really think that they'll cover that in that much depth in the exam, but if you are curious, there's a 5-minute read article that I'm going to post here in just a second. And so you can do if and then statements. Um, Another mechanism that you have is you can set a default field value at the field level. So if I go into Pardot and I go into like Pardot settings, I can go into object and field configuration and then prospect fields. And let's look for that first name one, right? So that's the one in question. I can click on the little gear. You do have to be an administrator within your org to be able to do this. Otherwise, you won't see this. So that may be um, a reason why you're not seeing it. So again, we see this. This was mapped automatically, right? When you plugged in the connector, something that if you're a little bit more curious about, you can look up Ben's, I think it was day 2, account configuration video on the YouTube track. And then what we'll do here is we'll click on this checkbox, set default mail merge value. And so then here I can put something like friend, right? It's a static one word, colleague, right? I can spell, but you get the gist. Now, this happens each time that there's not a field there. You're going to take either this approach for this field, or you're going to do the if and then approach. You cannot do both. On the if and then approach, what you can say is if there is a value in that field, show it. If not, else, then show, and you can change the phrase, right? And so that would prevent you from doing awkward, like blank spaces and stuff like that. If you decide to or forget and leave something here, your if and then kind of like syntax won't work. So you need to make sure that you choose one or the other. I personally like the if and then statement a little bit better because I get to customize it per campaign versus if I put it here, I have to remember to come and update it here before I send the next email. But if I have autoresponder emails, in my forms or engagement studios, that changes it there too. So that way I like to use if and then, right? Or if and else better because I get to customize it per email template that I put together. I'm gonna click cancel here. Let's go back. So a good use case is to HTML. You can use it to update email signatures for both sales and marketing emails fairly quickly based on the data of CRM ownership. So on your footer, right, HubSpot, for example, has a lot of really cool blog posts on like how you should be personalizing some of your emails. And one of their tips is to use like the person's like headshot and like their signature and their phone number. So like if somebody does need to reach out to some like a real person, that they have that information there. All right, moving on to snippets. So snippets is something that's fairly new in the Pardot and Salesforce world. We used to have what we call blogs back in the day. But anyway, snippets are essentially a reusable block of text, date, or link information that can be pulled into either Pardot emails, forms, landing pages, etc. In the documentation, it also says images. However, when you try to put an image in there, you only get to put the URL. I haven't found a way to actually like display the image. I put HTML within it, which is not really allowed. I put HTML around it when I embed it into an email, and I haven't had success. So I am actually going to be releasing a blog post on like all the things that I experimented with on snippets on the spot for Pardot coming up here in the next week or so. So be sure to check that out if you haven't subscribed. So essentially what these snippets are, they're static blocks. You type in information there and it doesn't really change. I'm going to go ahead and take you to build a snippet, or at least show you how I build a snippet. And then actually, let me go back here so really quickly. So snippets are based on business unit or campaign ownership. So dynamic content looked at the data on a person, and then you got to type in, right, like words or add images or whatever you wanted, and then it pulled in that content. But it was based on the data of a person. We move forward to HTML, and that's really a token of the data of that person, right? Snippets have nothing to do with the person. So snippets are something that you do manually. If you're a little bit more interested in like some high end use cases, obviously wait for my blog, but also if you go to pardreaming.com, we had another trailblazer. I believe her name is Marianne Fields. She did a session on snippets and really took it like a lot further than I think I have. So she used Flow to essentially update the information because, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she used Flow to update the snippets because her marketing team or her team weren't the one that were coming up with like event information. They had like a field marketing team or a field sales team, right? And so they were the ones with the information. So she gave them permission to edit that, and they didn't have access to Pardot. right? So they had somebody else edit it. It came into Pardot and then they used it, right? So a lot of really cool things that you could do with this. So if you're going to create snippets, you have to be in Pardot Lightning and you have to have connected campaigns and HTML enabled. If you're somebody, again, some last summer moving forward, all of that should have already been there by default, right? If you had a successful implementation. For anybody that's older, maybe you may be missing a piece or two, older as in 2020. If you did anything prior to that, like in 2019, 18, 17, um, you maybe don't have Lightning enabled yet, or you may not have connected campaigns enabled yet, stuff like that. So you do need to have that enabled. Now, once you create them, right, using Pardot Lightning, you are able to use them in Pardot Classic, but you just can't edit them or create them in Classic, right? And Classic would be logging in via pi.pardot.com. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do today is, show you kind of like how you associate different things like that. And then here's a popular use case. You can use it to update event information or footer information across multiple assets. So the cool thing about this is that you edit it once and it just mass updates everywhere else, right? So that's a really cool thing as well. If I take it and I go, to my snippets tab, you may not have this because it's hidden. So you just need to unhide it from your app manager. And then I have something like version B. So what I would do, and it would look something like this. I would give it a name, and then it has its own API name. When you start from scratch, like you click new, right? This is all blank. So when you type this, it automatically puts in your API name. If you clone it, it keeps the original API name and then you can use it. So you need to make sure that if you're cloning, that you're updating the API name to like version C or version D or whatever it is, because otherwise it won't work. The type here, this is all categorical. This doesn't necessarily say if I put image, I'm only able to add images, or if it's a link, I'm only able to add links, etc. This is just for you to be able to kind of like sort, okay? Then down here, we see the value, and you have like a shorter easy wig editor than normal. You have the ability that you can link and stuff, but notice that there's no like source button. This doesn't really allow HTML. Notice that it also doesn't have uh, like the ability for you to insert like dynamic content. They won't work together. So let me save you that. They won't work together. HTML, as you see here with this first thing, there's no button to include it. But if you grab it from Pardot or you just know it, after using it so many times, you can type it. It will work, right? But like you need to know that you need to put it. Otherwise, like there's no button here that would, enable you to just do it. So just be aware of that. Description, just like anything else in Salesforce, it's metadata. So it's great to have, especially if you have different team members editing it, but it's not like a fundamental field that you absolutely have to fill out. We would click save, and then it would produce something like this. Then just because it's here doesn't necessarily mean that we're good to go, right? This, you just create the snippet, but there's a couple of steps that you have to do. So that's one. Number two, you may think, oh, well, let me go straight to the email builder and like put it in there. So we're not necessarily going to see it there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to edit the template. And remember I mentioned that a snippet, it's either campaign or like business unit oriented. You can attach a snippet to multiple campaigns, right? Or you can attach the snippet to the business unit, which, if you only have one business unit, just your org, you can attach it to that, and then you can use it anywhere, right? Otherwise, if you put out a specific campaign, it would only work or it will only show on the specific asset that you're using that campaign under. So for this one, I'm gonna go click say, and notice this campaign type A. I'm going to try to add a merge field. So this is a merge field and snippets. So again, I wrote a blog and this being released later this next week on snippets and things that you need to look out for. So I would recommend that you read that. And notice that it was, I think it was A, is not being shown here because the campaign is not attached to that one, right? So I would have to come in here and do, I think it was A, the one that I edit. No, A was there, so B. Okay. So then I would have to click here, again there, and there it is B. And notice that it says to the campaign. And this one always showed because it's to the business unit, right? So anywhere within my org, I can use this one. Otherwise, you saw that this wasn't showing up earlier. So now we'll do here and insert it. If I leave this one and change it back to the A, this just won't populate, right? It won't give me an error that like that doesn't belong there or anything, but it just won't populate. So things to keep an eye on. So that's how you insert them, right? How do you actually associate them to the business unit or to the campaign? So we're gonna go back to snippets. We have this related tab. What I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna go to campaigns, and I'm gonna go to this. Let's do A. So I went ahead and added a related list called Snippet Assignments, and then you go here. So this is campaign A. I'm gonna go ahead and do new. So here's the assignment. I can do it based on campaign, or I can do it based on business unit, right? So, and I can change it here. So you do need to go to any campaign to be able to like assign it to the business unit or to the campaign. So again, I'm going to do A, and I'm going to search for my version A. Where is it? Maybe I didn't create one or deleted it probably. All right, I'm just going to set that one up. And so then now that you have that associated list here, it does take a couple of minutes to go back into Pardot and actually populate. So be aware of the sync time because it could be a frustrating experience if you're trying to find it. So again, snippets, you can put them on thank you content for the form. You can put them on an email. You can put them on a landing page, etc. Here's a couple of the resources that I have. If you want to take a screenshot of this, you can literally just Google these, and they're either the spot for Pardot articles or they're like directly from the Salesforce knowledge base. I'll recommend these for studying. And like I said, I'll also post the slides later. So we're about 30 minutes in. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is switch over to section B, which is continuing that cover personalization of the prospect experience. I know Ashley covered scoring grading already as part of like lead routing and lead management. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes on this one and then move forward to consent management because that's also on the exam. So for scoring, there is essentially what it is a measurement of how engaged that person is. In other words, how active are they, right? And that could mean anything on your website, filling out forms, emails, clicking on things that you can track, stuff like that. So Pardot automatically scores people once they're in your database and we've cookied them with a rubric similar to the one on the right. So pretty much everything here has an exact value. There's values out of the box, right, that are there, but you can also customize them. If you customize them, it is retroactive, which means it goes back in time and it updates everybody's scores. So if you have any rules or any workflows based on score, you may want to be careful and turn them off or just think through it before you do it, because then it could give you a lot of more positives or like may push people back or cause some havoc there. So you can also customize this globally, like I said here on the scoring rules, but you can also do it at the individual level. So usually on forms, you have a completion action, you can adjust score there. So when somebody fills out you know, a form, maybe that form is like a contact us form or something like that, and you want that to be weighted more than the others. Globally, normally, a form is worth 50 points. Maybe this one's 75 points. So you could do, instead of putting 75 on the global, that would turn everything 75. That's not the goal. You leave it as 50. And then on that form, you would do a completion action plus 25, and now they get 75. And then the more things that they do, you see something like this on the bottom center of the page, prospect activities. This log of activity also is shared between Salesforce. So salespeople, right, with the right permissions can definitely see this, right, and know, oh, this, marketing sent out this campaign and they seem to be filling out the form for the specific event or trade show that we're trying to do. Let me give them a call, right? Additionally, here's the piece that I want to focus on is we have scoring categories. So scoring categories are slices of the total score pie that help you identify what prospect is the most interested. So look at the score and it says, well, this number doesn't make sense, but it would be 45, right? And so the overall score would be 45. And so that way you would know, hey, this person, did X, Y, and Z. Cool, no problem. But then underneath it, what you can do is you're using your folder structure to put assets within those folders and then you cluster them. And so you can say, hey, for sure content, right? I can say maybe we have something for like training, right? And so if you're interested in any of our training courses and you go on those pages, you download any content that has to do with that training or fill out any of the forms on those pages, we cluster those groups and then we have a category on the bottom like that candy and hot sauce category for training, right? And so not only, and you can share this as a related list on the leads context and I think even accounts. So the cool thing about this is that I'm able to use this information to tailor it better to give you a better experience, right? And so I can use scoring categories in dynamic content. I could also use the score on its own for dynamic content and say, this person, right, has a score of 100, for example. To me, in my organization, that may mean that like they're invested, right? They fill out a couple forms, email, stuff like that. So when they download this new piece, maybe I give them a 10% off discount on one of our training courses because it seems like they know what they're doing, right? And so if they have maybe insights or interest in like 3 of the categories, but they're really focused on one over the other 2, then what I can do is like in an engagement studio, lead them through perhaps a different path. I'll leave. So I'll go, actually, let me go back to that test one. I don't like building new things if I don't have to. Okay. So again, scoring categories, right? So on this one, okay, now let me make something else. That was for routing. Um, I'm just gonna call it that. I'm gonna ignore all that because we're not talking about this today. So what I can say is I can use, let's see, where's the score? Okay, so I can use score, right? And then I can say if they have a score greater than 100, then they can go down that path. Let's say, and then I can do if no, then I can do one that says like between 99 and 50 or something like that, right? I'm messing up my numbers, but what I can do is I can send them through different paths, even though it's the same list of people, right? And so then here I can say, send them, this particular email, or send them this particular email, right? And then I could even go further than that and like copy this. And boom, like I just did the same thing, and I just go in here and edit the numbers. With the email, I am using one email template for everything, because if you recall, I can use dynamic content to personalize the experience. So then what I can do is I can use the same metrics here and my dynamic content, one dynamic content with as many variations as I want, and then I'm just like varying it here, right? So I can see very clearly how many people, would go under each category. We would go into content to build a scoring category. Let's see, where are the folders? Right, so you would have something like folder 1, this would be like the parent, and then you would have folder child, and then I would move like this one inside here, right? Parent. And so that's the way that the scoring category will start working. So I'll do that, and then I'll go under automations. Actually, part of settings, sorry. And then, scoring. And then I'll create a new scoring category. So this is how you actually create the scoring category. So I would say, folder X, whatever that is to you. For me, in my example, I said training. And then I usually like to include all historical activity, and then I'll choose a folder. So I'll choose parent. When I choose parent, it's going to take everything that's inside of it and also associate it to this one. If I don't want that to happen, then I pick the specific folders. And now I have my scoring category, right? And this is where I would edit the default scoring rules as well. And then when I go to an individual person, nobody here is going to have anything because, they'll have a score of 0. But when I come here, I would see all the activity that I showed you earlier. And then here I would see the score. And then if it was substantial, I would see the breakdown like I showed you earlier. Another trick that you can come in is click here. And then here it shows you, per category, there's nothing. There was X activities that produce X number of points. And then down here, you would also see per activity type, you would see the variation. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward here with grading. So really the only thing I'm going to say here is like, again, I can use this for engagement studios or for dynamic content or other pieces. Grading is the measurement of a customer's fit, right? So they may not be a customer yet, they're a prospect, but you had certain fields on your forms, the data that you're collecting from them or through other various sources, that are plugged into Salesforce and Pardot. You're trying to decide how much are they fit? Are they to my ideal customer persona? And is it okay for me to send them to sales yet? That's the goal. We want to build trust. We want to make sure that sales doesn't think that everything we send them is, garbage. And we want to make sure that we get good results, because the more good leads that we do, the higher probability of them closing the deal, which ultimately means that we get attribution for that, right? So again, here, each field like you have on the right side of the screen is worth X number of points. The grading of a person, I won't go into too much detail. I do have one particular resource here that I am going to pull up and share with everybody that I think makes it really useful. So let me click on that. And again, just taking a couple points. So it describes scoring, grading, and then pretty much this is what it does. We're looking for somebody that has a small company in the industry of technology in the department of marketing who's a manager. I'm going to click a couple of the ones that, it says, and then I'm going to grade it. So it gives a C. So then it comes back down here and it says, okay, so we have we said number of people, right? And then they have their scores and they have their grades. If I'm looking just a score, I would probably say Sam and Sarah are the ones that I want to like send to sales. But we're taking both metrics before we decide that. If I look at those two girls again, Sam, it's an excellent choice to send over, but Sarah isn't. She's not a good fit. at least based on the documentation. On the data that we have on her. So sales probably would reject her. And so if we click a little bit over here, it gives us some examples of why this person's scores may be a little bit higher or what their grade may be lower, right? And so here's some documentation that you can download and go through to learn a little bit more about that. All right. So what I have here now is section C. So we're going to be talking about consent management. So with all of this put together, I found one resource that I think should be like what everybody studies from. But I'm going to outline it here, hopefully in a little bit more detail. So what we're going to cover first is like preference management. There's different types of preferences that you can capture with Pardot. So number one at the very top, this, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it. You've gone to a website and then you either get a sticky banner on the footer of the website, or something at the top near the navigation, or it just stays on top, and as you scroll, it stays there. And it looks something like, do you want to accept the cookies, right? And it says something about, we'll be using these cookies to track your movements through the website. Click here to read like the privacy notice or the privacy policy, etc. And then it says yes or no, or opt in or opt out or whatever. So Pardot has a mechanism for this, right? And you can edit that by going into, actually here, I think on the prospects. Let's see. Man, where was it? Sorry about that. I just found it not too long ago. Oops. There it is, under domain management. Sorry. I literally just went through this question yesterday. And so if we click edit, track, and opt-in options, this is the message that will display. This is the HTML, CSS that Pardot will use to display it, and then some other styles. And so then here, what you can do is you can opt in all visitors, or you can opt in people from specific countries. And so if you just wanted the EU, it does it for you. You can add more countries or take countries off, or right, you can add more on your own. Most companies prefer to do this on their actual website versus Pardot. You have both options. If you enable this in Pardot, it works on both your landing pages that you built within Pardot and on your website, as long as you have that website tracking code on your actual website. Secondly, you have something like, you fill out your newsletter form, stuff like that. We're talking about here a double opt-in, right? Some countries require it, right, as part of their kind of like enablement. If you ever used MailChimp before, right, probably I think up to like a year and a half ago or a year ago, they went away from it. They used to get an automatic email that says, hey, we noticed that you subscribed. Was this really you, right? And I'm not a legal expert here, so there's some legalese in there that you can input, but ultimately what we're trying to do is collect consent from the person, not only from them filling out the form, but a secondary email that was sent to them to confirm that they wanted to be opted in, right? So that would be like kind of like the second step to make sure that they really want to be on your subscription list, because a double opt-in would mean that they're really interested in. So that would probably create a better database, a cleaner database. Lastly, maybe part of that email or a subsequent email would be, hey, we noticed that you subscribe for the newsletter. We have other types of communication that you may be interested in. Head on over to our email preferences center and opt in or out of specific communications. So on the top here, we see an email address that has a bunch of asterisks. So the thing here to be compliant, Pardot went ahead and did a kind of shielded what the whole email address is like, just in case maybe you logged into you fill out a form on somebody else's computer or something like that, and they just don't want to give the whole email address, so that way somebody doesn't just come here and snatch it and start emailing you. So that was something. You do have to be cookied, so you would have had to fill out again a form, or open an email that was sent to you and click on it, so that cookie was assigned to you, and then your email would automatically be listed there. You cannot just type in your email address, unlike other newsletter subscription services. So then you have your different options that you as an admin would create and maintain. And then at the bottom, you have a button to just say, hey, I don't want any of this, right? And then you can unsubscribe. The goal is to give them enough options, so like people can just say, I want less emails or less frequency, and not really unsubscribe altogether. And so this is how I borrowed this from the team at Nebula Consulting. So what they did is they put together here kind of like what a double opt-in process would look like. So you get a form submission, right? You're on the internet, you fill it out. And there was a checkbox that said, you opt in to their privacy policy. Well, they didn't check the box. That means you're not emailing them. Let's say you did they checked the box. So then we go check something else. Then we would send them a verification email, which is that double opt-in. And if either it wasn't, there wasn't any clicks, or it wasn't delivered, or the person unsubscribed straight up, we definitely don't email them. After we get that confirmation, we have two confirmations, probably with a timestamp, right? If that's how you guys set them up. And then since they fill out that form for the newsletter, then they would at least be in that list, but you can send them to the email preferences center so they can get additional emails, and then you can email them. So in theory, this is how you should be managing your process, but everybody does it a little bit different. All right, so I'm briefly going to discuss here bounces and opt-outs. So a hard bounce is when the email cannot make it to the recipient. Soft bounce is when maybe there's a temporary technical issue that prevents that email from being delivered. And an opt-out is either when you import a blacklist or unsubscribe list into Pardot from another tool, or when people or bots sometimes click unsubscribe on your emails, right? And so then they are unsubscribing. So I gave you some examples there. And then here's some scenarios, right, of what happens. So there's two fields in Pardot that control, like either if they're opted out. The opted out is a field that does sync with Salesforce. The do not email is a field that does not sync with Salesforce, right? So it's for Pardot record only. So here are some scenarios, and then some of the checkboxes that would be enabled when certain things happen. And this is also on one of the resources that I'm about to outline. The last thing here on consent management is deleting records. So this was relatively news to me, but you apparently have to delete the lead and contact record from Salesforce first. When you delete a leader and contact record that's tied to a prospect in Salesforce, it sends the prospect to the recycle bin. You should also be able to just delete people in Pardot and send them to the recycle bin, but that does not delete the lead and the contact from Salesforce, right? And so let's say you are trying to make sure that you comply with a GDPR request that says delete all my data from your system. You would send them to the recycle bin first, right? You would go to the person and delete them, and then you would go to the recycle bin, and you see on the bottom it says, with however number selected, permanently delete, and then click go. What this does, it actually scrubs all the data from the Pardot system. And like if they were to fill out another form, it would count as a brand new person, but it can take up to 30 days. Usually it's a lot less than that, but on the back end, it could be 30 days for that to work. And here's some items on Castle, GDPR, CCPA, and other consent things that you probably want to study on or are interested in. All right, so we're here about an hour in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spend like 7 more minutes on engage, and then we'll likely open it up to questions. Um, if you do have anything that's coming to mind here on those first two sections, go ahead and drop it on the chat, and we'll hopefully get to it pretty soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover the last section here, which is the Salesforce Engage, the whole 3% of your exam. So I'm here to just give you a little overview of like, what is it, what are the benefits, and like a quick demo, um, which I just have a video of because I don't have an actual like license for. So according to Salesforce, Salesforce Engage lets marketing and sales share material to help you boost your company's selling power. So in theory, this tool is for like field marketers or sales reps, right? That are going out in trade shows, visiting people, stuff like that. And you can, as marketing, set up pre-approved email templates that they can customize, right? But they don't need to go through you to do it. It is an add-on. So just because you have Pardot doesn't mean that you have access to this, even if you have like, plus or advanced or whatever version tier of Pardot you have. You need Pardot to use it, and you need access to Pardot to use it, but you don't necessarily like uh, Pardot doesn't need it to function. And so the package usually like everything that you need to set it up comes included with Pardot. So there's not like a separate package that you need to install or anything. If you didn't have it before and your Pardot is older, you could upgrade your package and it's included in there already. Or if you have a brand new installation, the pieces already included in there. So again, you don't need a separate package. Normally, this license is at least in the US are $50, but that I don't know if that varies between country and country. So that may not necessarily be useful. Um, and of course, if you don't have an engaged license, you can use the additional features that I'm about to cover. So what are the benefits, right? So really the goal here is to empower people that are not in the office, right? And what better way to do it than from your phone, right? Or your computer, your laptop. So what Engage does, it helps you filter very easily. So if you guys have used project management tools like Trello, that's like a bunch of little cards and like you can move them up and down and stuff like that. Very useful, like in agile frameworks and stuff like that. They use a similar concept, and you can filter your prospects, right, your leads and your contacts based on their activity type. So what are they doing in Pardot or the website? You can do it based on geography. So that's pretty cool if like, you are um, following up with certain leads that are new inbound leads and your sales territory, right? You can also do it on ownership. However, the ownership only pertains to lead and contact ownership. Account ownership in this event doesn't really translate, or if you have like a customer support role, like custom CRM owner role, that doesn't work either. When you get engaged, 250 is the number of emails that people can do per 24 hours. But if you go into Pardot, you can actually increase that to 500. And so that's per person that has that license per 24 hours. There's also a plugin for Outlook and Gmail that you can use to like switch back and forth, right? So you're on your computer and you're like getting an email and stuff like that. You can pull that information over and send the email from the template right away from Outlook or Gmail. That also gets logged into the Salesforce activity log. So that's really cool. You could also set alerts. So when somebody does something specific, you get a notification, which again, if you're following specific like accounts, that could be a really cool thing to do. And they have a pretty easy UI. So like it's very, very easy. Like I said, little cards that you can move up and down, and they do on their own based on who's most active, right? That's something I feel like sometimes we struggle with in sales to see like, I have 3,000 people that I own, but like it's hard to go to 3,000 people in a day and see, who's active and who's not. So that could be something useful. Again, mobile access. I mean, you're at the coffee shop, you're going out for lunch, you're on boarding a plane, you can see it all from your phone. And then you can have a very easy to understand and comprehensive reporting, which campaigns worked and which ones didn't, right? So instead of having to bug sell marketing, did anybody respond or anything like that, you can see it. Here are two slides of like how that looks like. So earlier I said, Outlook or Gmail, so you have one of each. And then on the Outlook one, you see that it's the left navigation bar that shows you kind of like all that information. You also can toggle what you're tracking and what you're not. And then on the left, you see marketing created a couple of templates, and you can select which ones you want to track, which ones you don't, and then also which templates you want to use. Additionally, like in the way that I was telling you about the little cards, this is how that would look like. So you can have like kind of like a dashboard of like little cards, and you can say, hot leads, the people in my region or people from events that I'm following up. So it doesn't just have to be like one particular campaign that you're following or tracking. It could be multiple ones. And then on the right of this, you have how you're configuring, right? The different notifications or how you're configuring the layouts here that you're seeing. So again, very easy for you to set up. There is an actual package for this one to install, like if you want like desktop notifications. So like if you have used Slack before, right? Or like Facebook Messenger or like WhatsApp, right? Like you get it on your phone, it's really easy, but sometimes it's a little buggy-ish when you try to add it to your computer. So similar process, but it does the same thing. It's just, now you can do it on your desktop. And here's a couple of those resources. So that's we went over a little bit over an hour, but that's the resources that I have. And then the last thing here that I'm going to do is we're just going to go, and I'm going to skip through this, but I thought that this demo was actually really, let's see, there was a, all right, we're not doing all that. YouTube. And it's like Engage. It's like a 1 minute demo. So that's why we're going to go ahead and take it, because I think it would be useful for everybody to watch it. Cool. So that's what we have for today. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Marcus. That was really insightful. And, you know, adding on the demo part is just like icing on the cake. Saucing it up. Like there were typically two sections, the major, like, yeah, an important sections of Pardot Consultant Bootcamp, wherein you shared a lot of resources. Like I cannot list them right now. But yeah, to be honest, they were super duper amazing. So before anything else or before we wrap up for the day, I'll just quickly pick up few random questions in the chat, which says one question is, where is the HTML supposed to be enabled?
Oh yeah. So great question. So I'm gonna reshare my screen really quickly. When you log into your instance, either in Classic or in Pardot, you should see something similar to this. And if you haven't enabled it, there should be something up here that says enable HTML or something like that. Get started. It walks you through a couple of steps. It's not hard. The We have a guide on the spot for Para that walks you step by step. There is a warning that says, are you sure you want to do this? Do it. It doesn't affect any templates that you're doing right now. You can go one by one or multiple one and switch them over to HTML. But if you leave those as PML, they stay working, but your new ones pick up with HTML, right? So that's the only thing to consider. If you do go back and edit a template and you edit something with tokens, though, it will force you to move that one to HTML. So just be aware of that. But again, it doesn't affect anything at that moment. So just be aware.
Awesome. I think Vipul, your question got answered. Still, if you have any queries, please feel free to pop in the Slack channel of Pardot 020. Anything, guys, you have related to Pardot, and if at all your question is missed, feel free to put them there. We'll quickly bring one more, which says, if we have more countries, how do we handle dynamic content based on their languages?
So there's not a part out of the box feature that's just going to translate it for you, unfortunately. So normally when I work with enterprise level teams, they have somebody in that market that does like the US market would be the one that sets it up in English. And then what if there's variations on the product or on the content, it'll be sent to that market to be translated, and then it comes back to us, and then we do it that way. Um, there is a like on the website, obviously there's web development that can happen to translate that content for you. So that's one way. I've also seen where we collect like your language preference, right? So usually it's like Spanish and French are usually the ones that are, at least for the clients that I work with, are the ones that we capture the most. But again, it's manual. I don't know of anything in Pardot that would allow you to customize that, aside of like you having a field that says, I want to be reached out to in Spanish, or maybe if you're collecting country like Spain, you would say, oh well, I'll send them something in Spanish, but you're inferring a lot of things there by doing so. Sorry, I don't have a more straightforward answer to you, but there's nothing that we can do automatically. Raya, can we add multiple variations of dynamic content? Yes, you can do up to 25. And then you have your baseline just in case those 25s don't work. On the spot for Pardot, if you need more than 25, you would set up a new dynamic content, and we can do HTML if else statements to increase it more than 25. So there's a guide to how to do that. So I would recommend that you check that out. Pedro, can you have ranges like between this number? No. It is very, unless you have a pick list that says, like employee size 1 through 50 or 50 through whatever. If it's a pick list, yes. But anything else like that, we don't have that option currently.
Great. I think that's super insights. And the next question we'll take is, how do we report the delete of the contact based on GDPR rules?
I don't have an answer for you. Sorry. Usually, uh, I'm usually just involved in like the setting up of the process, right? Usually after that, the legal team or compliance team gets involved, and they'll communicate directly with that person that asked, right, for their information to be removed or something like that. So they take it from there. So I'm not by any means a GDPR expert. So I just wanted to let you, know. Sorry.
No worries. So I think the last question that we'll take: how can we use snippets in Pardot Classic, or how can we show how snippets can be used in Pardot Classic?
Yeah, so it's this exact same way that I showed you. So you can embed them in dynamic content, landing pages, and stuff like that, using that same merge field where you would normally go and insert variable tags. Same exact thing, but if you're sending them up, right, and assigning them to a campaign or to a business unit, all of that happens in Salesforce. So you either would need to work with a Salesforce admin to get you the permission so you can do it, or they will need to do it for you. Once that's situated correctly, then they just come over into Pardot Classic or Lightning, and you use them exactly the same way that I showed you. So the issue is when you're trying to create them or edit them or assign them to a right campaign or to the right uh, business unit, you don't have control over that unless you have access to Salesforce. So
Great. I think Trailblazers, you got your answers right there. And please feel free, again, I would repeat myself, please feel free to put any of your questions related to Parrot in the Slack channel, Parrot 0 to Hero. That's really meant for you all, but not for any Parrot or any kind of support questions. Thank you so much, Marcus, for giving us an insightful session. It was really a good content that we could build up for Parrot Consultant Bootcamp, and I'm sure our Trailblazers loved it. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending day 6 Pardot Consultant Bootcamp. Please stay tuned right there for day 7 tomorrow at same time, 8 p.m. IST. Thanks again, Marcus. Bye
bye,
bye.
everybody. Nice seeing everybody. Bye. I'll be posting the slides on